Like a lot of YouTubers, I may overuse the word ultimate, but this thing is more than just the Ultimate Switch Pro controller. The Pro GCC from Handheld Legend may just be the ultimate controller, period. It might look like just another Switch Pro controller, but there's truly much more than meets the eye. We have a lot of features to go over, from Hall effect sensing sticks to snapback filters to a whole freaking app for this thing. Oh, and also, you can use this on almost every Nintendo console going as far back as the NES. Handheld Legends sent me this controller for free for review, and in case I've already sold you on this one, I'll just go ahead and say that you can use code JAKE or scan this QR code here to save 10% on your first purchase. This isn't sponsored, but just so we're clear, I will get a kickback if you use my code. All right, let's get started. There's so much to this controller, I genuinely don't know where to begin. At its very basic, the Pro GCC is just a heavily modified Switch Pro controller with a ton of upgrades. It has Hall effect sticks to help fight drift, and also has a snapback filter. For those who don't know, when you flick a stick, snapback is the movement of the stick after its release, and the filter makes sure no accidental stick movements are counted as an input on screen. I feel like most of you know what Hall effect sticks do by now, but if you don't, I'll link a great video by Wolfden down below. The gist of it is they don't wear down as easily as normal potentiometer-based sticks. You can check out the snapback as well as calibrate your sticks easily in the web app. You can also edit each individual LED color. I set mine to match the colors of the GameCube controller, but you can get as wild as your heart wants. Speaking of GameCube, there is a special function that I am honestly not sure what this does. I asked Handheld Legend and I'm waiting to hear back. Lastly, you can remap the buttons to whatever you want. And if you look closely, you can see that there are multiple tabs for multiple consoles. That's because with the correct cables, you can use this with the NES, SNES, N64, and GameCube. Of course, there is always Bluetooth and USB-C, so you can use this controller with just about everything. The versatility of this controller is amazing, and for $175, it better be. That's a pretty penny. But if you don't care about all that wireless stuff, you can get it for $150 instead. Now, with both of those prices, you get the controller fully built, but you can get it for much cheaper if you're willing to build it yourself. And there are a couple ways you can go about that. If you already have a Switch Pro controller, you can just buy the Pro GCC board for $60 to $80 and swap the boards. Or you can buy a brand new shell and make it as a new controller from scratch, which I love that there are options, don't get me wrong. But I do have gripes with all of them. I do think this controller is worth the money fully built, but obviously I like saving a nice chunk of change and doing it myself. To me, the problem with replacing my Pro controller motherboard is I'm wasting a perfectly good controller. Clearly I should recommend starting from scratch, right? Well, the problem with that is, as much as I love Extreme Rate, they have a monopoly on the Switch Pro controller replacement shell market. And the reason that's a problem is because they don't include every plastic piece you need to build a full controller from scratch. So if you want to start from scratch, you need to buy a replacement shell from AliExpress that includes everything you need. And if, God forbid, you actually want to use an Extreme Rate shell for this, because I do really like their stuff for the most part. My personal Pro controller uses their shell and buttons. I like it. But if you do use Extreme Rate stuff, you'll still have to buy the AliExpress shell and the Extreme Rate one to get enough parts to complete the controller. Now, I would like to make this extremely clear. Pun intended. This is not a Handheld Legend problem. This was a problem I came across because I requested that I make this myself, even though Handheld Legend sent me everything I needed for free. And the first time I tried to assemble it, I didn't have the middle pieces that I needed until Handheld Legend sent another whole basic shell with all the pieces. The second time I put it together, I did have all the pieces. It wasn't the most fun process, if I'm being honest, because the way Nintendo designed the Pro controller is a little weird, but it's really not that complicated if you follow a guide. However, I ended up taking it apart a third time because of one glaring issue: the D-pad. The original style D-pad would regularly press up or down when I was actually hitting left or right. Thankfully, Handheld Legends solved that problem with an optional split D-pad. I'm a huge fan of split D-pads, and I probably should have just done this from the start, but I probably wouldn't have thought to mention this if I didn't go with the original D-pad, ultimately ended up being a good thing that I found that out. So I definitely recommend going with the split D-pad for this. Beyond that, I don't really have any major complaints. This feels essentially like the perfected version of the Switch Pro controller. If I'm being brutally honest, I probably won't use it for the older consoles because I prefer to use the controllers that each system was designed for, even this abomination. But I would definitely like to see this work for the Wii and the Wii U to replace those consoles' Pro controllers, since the Switch Pro controller is just a better version of those past controllers. Plus, I refuse to use this Crime Against Humanity. What I'm trying to say is Wii and Wii U support would be an update I would love to see. I will note that you can use the Pro GCC as a GameCube controller on those consoles, but not every Wii and Wii U game allows you to use a GameCube controller. But let's finally talk about the biggest use case for this controller. Super Smash Bros. That's the game that this controller was designed around. And it's awesome that you can use this with the original, Melee, and Ultimate on their consoles of origin. The only problem is, I suck at Smash Bros. So I called in my friend and former podcast co-host, Jordan, to help me out with this part of the review. As you will see, he is much better at Smash than I am, and luckily enough, the Pro controller is his preferred way to play.
You want my initial first impression? I feel like the normal Pro controller feels better, but given time though, I don't think this would be bad.
Yeah.
It needs to be worn in. All controllers actually, when you're talking to a Smash Brothers player, need to be worn in. I think it will be good when it gets worn in. I like all the buttons. Feels good. Feels like a Pro controller. I mean, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. This probably has features somebody who is like a professional or like an uber competitive Smash Brothers player will enjoy. If you're just like a regular person though who wants a good controller for Smash, don't get this. Start with a regular Pro controller and then figure out what you need. Do not buy this with the intention of, oh, I'm going to get better at the game. You should get good at something before you start buying the expensive equipment that makes it easier, because you're not even going to really notice a difference till you're at a level where those things matter. It is a good controller, though. It feels good.
Yeah.
It feels just as good as any other Pro controller.
But I think it's safe to say that I recommend the Pro GCC. However, Handheld Legend is cooking up what is essentially the GameCube controller equivalent of the Pro GCC in the GC Ultimate. That was on a Kickstarter last year, and I'm definitely looking forward to reviewing that on the channel very soon. So get subscribed to see that when it drops. As much as I love the Pro GCC, I think the GameCube controller is one of the best controllers ever made, so I think I know which one I'll prefer. Everything I talked about today will be linked down below, and once again, you can use code JAKE or scan this QR code here to save 10% off of your first order at Handheld Legend. And thank you, Handheld Legend, for sending all of this out for review. But that's about it for me. So like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later, guys. Kind of feel the need to burp. I think it's going to pass. No, but it's a very weak one.